Welcome to Rose City Politics. I am John Lidke, and it is February the 16th. And our regular panel tonight includes Doug Sartori coming from the data realm. Doug, how are you doing?
Doing great. I'm here in my comfort zone. Things are getting a little too scary out there for me, so I've retreated into the Gibson.
Strange times. I hope the Gibson treats you well. I know my Gibson treats me well. Mine is a specific type of whiskey, though, not a place like yours. Both, I'm sure, work. We also have Don Merrifield Jr. here. Don, how are you in the void?
Doing good in the void, just waiting on whatever this named winter storm coming this time is. And what's funny about Doug is I've often confused him for Keanu Reeves from The Matrix, so that is a perfect background for him.
Makes sense. That's
Yeah.
why I can only grow the beard so long, because otherwise dealing with the paparazzi, it's just a never-ending thing, right?
Can't they just leave you alone?
Well, we are on a new episode of Ward Watch, folks. It's 2022, and we are on Ward Watch 7, Ward 7. Support us at patreon.com/Rose City Politics. And we are in BizX Magazine on bizxmagazine.com, and of course, on all of your favorite social media and podcasting apps. And Rose City Politics is able to broadcast live on tape thanks to the kind support of Liuna 625, Building Better Communities. As I said, we're going to talk Ward 7, but we were just having a brief conversation off the top here about, we're on now week 7 of doing these dives into the wards without any real meaningful conversation about the current events that are going on or the breaking news. We've had a little bit of opportunity here or there to slip into it, but for the vast majority of these conversations, it's just been focused in on the past. And of course, now over the last 2 episodes, I made my joke last week about coming back from Ottawa while I was actually just off sick the prior week. So, we're into our 3rd week now of the ongoing protests, occupations, blockades, convoys, and we really haven't had a chance to chat about it. And we're not going to dive into those subjects right now because we don't have the time to do so, but we are going to just do a quick reflection. Doug, you brought this one up. You were saying how weird it is not to be able to cover this breaking news while we're watching this breaking news. What's it like, from your perspective?
Well, first and foremost, John, I've got to say that you have been doing the whole team proud with your intense coverage on social media of these events. For those who are listening but are not John Lidke fans, he spent the majority of last weekend live streaming from the site of the convoy in Windsor, and also off-site, reacting to live streams and stuff like that. Absolutely yeoman's work, really appreciated. I think it was really good for you to do that. And maybe gave you a little bit of an outlet so that it's not so weird to be doing this. I think we often have packed and busy shows where there is so much current events going on. And equally as often covering municipal politics, you will get a lull when there's not a whole lot going on and we kind of have to manufacture a conversation. That's happened, I don't know, 3 times since I've been on the show. Sometimes we have to manufacture a conversation, but I always have found those to be among the most valuable, not when we manufacture something, but when we have time to take a topic apart, dig deep into it, and really explore it. And taking 10 weeks, plus maybe more if we decide to talk about the mayor's race, taking 10 weeks to talk about ward by ward, a detailed conversation about each ward. I think it's a good thing for us to be doing in general, because I don't think there would be any other place to get this kind of information and analysis in Windsor if we weren't doing it. And after all, this is what people come to this show for, is ultimately municipal politics. In many ways, the municipal election every 4 years is like our Olympic Games and Super Bowl all rolled into one. We have the most interest in the podcast. The biggest listenership happens in sort of the 3 months or so leading up to Election Day, and I think it makes a lot of sense for us to focus on this and take the 10 hours plus to really dive deep and give folks this level of insight, but definitely when so many interesting things are happening and there is still a pressing need for analysis of current events, I do have to say that we picked a hell of a time to do it.
Yeah, it's timing is everything, I suppose. And I was speaking with someone who I really respect in the community today. I'm not going to name whom, but you know, a community leader in a very, very respectable role in our community, who said that, you know, they really respect what it is that we do. And I'm not trying to toot our own horn, but just simply from the point that, you know, there's 90 minutes sometimes of, you know, deep analysis of these ward issues, and that you can't get that anywhere. And this person said that they actually listen sometimes twice. And I thought that was just, you know, wild, because I wouldn't recommend that for anyone's sanity whatsoever with, you know, where some of our conversations go. But Donald, I'm going to call you Donald right now. I rarely get that opportunity to.
Sound like my grandmother after I broke something.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad it's just because of the context thing and not my voice. But Donald, is it what's it been like for you, you know, watching what's unfolding around us while doing these deep dives?
Well, what's going on around us is unfortunate, no matter what side of the debate you're on. I haven't listened to you on Twitter because I generally find you offensive, and all the people you let talk on your Twitter are offensive. So
Totally fair.
It's
Totally
best.
fair.
It's best not to listen. Aside from the fact that I've been on 2 of them. Yeah, I mean, you know, I think Doug kind of summed it up pretty good. You know, once the municipal elections come around, this is kind of, you know, we got a set platform and a set thing for what we do every 4 years. So it's nice to have this, and it makes the show a little easier, because believe it or not, sometimes there's not much to talk about. Right now we have a plethora of things to speak about outside of municipal politics. We just don't have the time. So, you know, all I've garnered so far is I am so happy that so many Americans have finally figured out what the capital of Canada is. And they're so concerned about us. They're sending millions of dollars up here in foreign aid to make sure we survive and peacefully. At least I assume that's what they're sending the money for.
One thing about when Canada becomes a topic of heated political debate in the States,
never good.
Well, the thing that you realize is how weak and pathetic our like meme machinery is in Canada compared to what the Americans can come up with. I mean, I have seen like videos, images, like the stuff just is endless, right? Like one Tucker Carlson screenshot about, you know, Canada style tyranny, and I've seen like 20 permutations of it, and they were all great. So you have to appreciate the attention from our very talented neighbors to the north.
Yeah, to our specific north, absolutely. And you know, it is interesting. I saw Washington Examiner put out a post today on social media, and it was just a House of Commons debate, and I just, my head just went like, oh my God, why are you showing Americans debates in Parliament? Like, this is like what has brought us to this point. It's not great, but
nobody tell them about the mace.
Yeah.
You know, that would bring up,
and on the flip side, for how many years have mayors been trying to get Windsor on the world stage? Well, congratulations.
And it must be frustrating for all of the efforts at, you know, trying to legitimately grassroots manufacture it himself. It was astroturfed and pushed down upon him by external forces. And I mean, he's only able to, you know, sort of react in, you know, in real time and not set an agenda. But anyways, let's not digress too much. Let's get into the show. We are talking Ward 7, folks. Glad to have you all here. We're putting aside the ongoing insurrection, but we're going to shift focus into a nice conversation that should just, you know, if you're the kind of person that just needs something to fall asleep to, this might help you get there. I'm going to let Doug set the table with some election results. He's then going to dive into the demographics of Ward 7. And, you know, we'll go a little bit from there. So Doug, without further ado, I'll let you set the dulcet tones.
Yeah.
Follow
Okay.
me.
Here's your Statistics Canada ASMR. Election results in Ward 7, going back to 1991. Keep in mind that the ward system was revamped for the 2010 election. That was when the 10 ward system started. Prior to that, the Ward 7 was part of the old Ward 5. So just keep that in mind. 1991, Rick Limoges won 9,439 votes. Second place, Tom Wilson. That pairing again in 1994 and also in 1997, Rick Limoges and Tom Wilson. In 1999, there was a by-election. Eddie Francis won that with 1,822 votes, edging out Joanne Gignac, who garnered 1,507. In 2000, Eddie Francis got over 10,000 votes. Tom Wilson was again in the second spot. In 2006, Joanne Gignac finally got her turn in the limelight, 9,220 votes to Percy Hatfield's 9,080. At that point, again, the wards were reallocated in 2010. Percy Hatfield won the first election in the newly created Ward 7, 4,264 votes to Angelo Marignani's 2286. In 2013, there was a by-election in Ward 7 to replace Percy Hatfield, who had gone on to the Ontario legislature. Eric Kazmarczyk won that, 1,140 votes. Second place, Angelo Marignani, 1,088. In 2014, Eric won re-election with 3,761 votes. Angelo Marignani, 2,539. 2018, Eric Kazmarczyk got a pretty stunning 47-45, which is close, but not quite 70% of the vote. Angelo Marignani, second place again, down to 982 votes. In 2020, Mr. Kazmarczyk went on to represent Windsor-Tecumseh in the House of Commons, and Gwyn Gill won the resulting by-election with 1,015 votes. And Angelo Marignani, again, the runner-up with 879 votes. So that brings you up to date. We do have more detailed numbers on the 2020 by-election, but I think we'll hold off on that and maybe talk about it a little bit later in context of the upcoming races. So the demographics of Ward 7, these are numbers from the 2016 census. We are still waiting for the 2021 census release. We do have an update on population numbers, but beyond that, we have nothing yet. In 2011, the population of the ward was 24,996. In 2016, the population of the ward was 26,584. And in 2021, the Ward 7 population had grown an eye-popping 12%. The population of the ward at census time was 29,803, making it by far the most populous ward in the city, although it has been that for a number of years already. Average population density is 2,871 residents per square kilometer. 23% of the population is under 19. That is a tie for second place with Ward 1. 20.4% of the population is over 65. That is third in Windsor, behind Ward 1 and Ward 6. 1,284 single parent families, 80% of them led by women. The average after-tax median income in Windsor is in Ward 7 of Windsor is $31,721. The after-tax average income is $35,904. So putting that in context, it is what I would consider a middle-class ward between the low after-tax median income in Ward 2 of $19,379 and the high across the city in Ward 1, $35,365. The low income rate in Ward 7 is 12%. 6.2% of the population is in the bottom income decile. That's the bottom 10% of wage earners. 8.05% of the population is in the top income decile. So that compares relatively favorably to other wards. The low income rate, that rate of folks in the bottom income decile, is actually the lowest across the city at 6.2. And the percentage in the top income decile is good for third place after wards 9 and 1. 2% of Ward 7 residents use public transit to reach employment, and there are 700 households in Ward 7 with an income greater than $150,000. And finally, just looking at the industries of employment in Ward 7, the top 3 industries are manufacturing, healthcare and social assistance, and retail trade. And that is the demographic and electoral history of Ward 7.
Hey, let me ask you a question, and you probably aren't prepared for this at all. When Eddie Francis ran and won in Ward 7 over there, did he actually live in the ward? Because I know after he was mayor, he did not live in that area, because I showed his house when he sold it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he lived there. He lives in Ward 9 now, and has lived in Ward 9 for many years, at least since the first time that I dropped literature at his door in 2014. So not
He's
sure.
moved since then.
Yeah, not sure about whether he lived in the ward. It was Ward 5 at the time that he ran. Not sure about that. He may not have been. We need to appeal to our listeners to let us know whether he lived in the ward or not. But lots of councillors don't live in their wards, or at least historically haven't.
Yeah, I was just curious when you were saying that, and that just dawned on me that I do know where he lived, because like I said, I didn't sell his house. I showed his house before it sold. I think he sold it about 4 or 5 years ago. Unfortunately, after his wife got pretty sick. So yeah, I was just wondering if he lived in the ward at that time, or if he's one of them interlopers that everybody goes insane about until the election actually comes.
There's a whole term for it. Isn't it allowed to be said in polite society? It seems like it shouldn't be.
What, you talking carpetbagger?
Yeah, it just seems a lot worse than it is.
Like, I'm a white guy, so I'm assuming that's racist somehow.
I just don't like to say it out loud. I think Doug took the risk. Thank you for all of us on the team.
That's
Okay.
Doug Sartori at rcp.com.
That's not actually my email address.
No.
Why would you give in? It was a perfect out.
I'll give you his
Okay.
real one if you DM me later on.
Well, if I offended any carpetbaggers, I sincerely apologize.
What is it? Like, I don't even know what it means. I've heard it a billion times.
You're carrying carpets back and forth into places because you're setting up shop.
No,
No.
it's I believe it goes back.
Sounds
to,
perfect.
It goes back to Reconstruction, to post Civil War South USA, and my understanding of it is that the term refers to a person who is running, coming to a district to run in an election, even though they have no connection to it, which was apparently a thing, and they had a bag made out of carpet. So like the carpet bag literally was their luggage. That's and I'm gonna furiously Google while John speaks next to find out if I'm in trouble or not.
No, you're absolutely right, and that's just what I wanted to say. I mean, it is you're bringing their carpets from district to district, and yeah, no, it's literally an actual bag that is made of the fabric of the carpet. You are,
you always count
I'd
on
like to
Doug.
See a carpet bag actually.
It would be kind of heavy. I don't think it's the most effective use of carpet.
It's a very big bindle is basically it.
Looks like a purse.
Okay, let's get into the
What's a half hour on carpet bagging?
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Rose City Politics. Let's do a quick reset here. We are talking Ward 7.
Yeah, and world history.
and world history. We're going to talk a little bit about the projects and controversies of Ward 7 over the past year. We've allocated 15 minutes. That seems like a very, very large amount of time.
Optimistic.
Yeah, optimistic. Typically we and this is not to speak down upon Ward 7. Maybe I'm speaking out of line. Maybe there are a bunch of issues that I missed, but I went through Google and I tried to find them. But up first, I think it wouldn't be surprising to anyone who was in Ward 7, who has listened to the show, that there was a proposal to bring forward the movement of Sandpoint Beach that brought the mayor and the councillor decided to push it forward. We know that there has been a lot of issue with quite frankly, Sandpoint Beach in the westward position with, unfortunately people being lost, and Windsor police that confirmed at the time that there was a 24-year-old male who disappeared in Lake St. Clair on the 22nd. So, this was a big deal. We talked about this on the show at the time. I want to, I guess, set the table with this one. It was the most shared story that we had when we talked about issues there in the ward. We saw, though, of course, that the mayor and Councillor Gill, were really aligned on this issue, standing side by side. And it really came quickly after Councillor Marignani, not Councillor Marignani, candidate Marignani, who has run a number of times in the ward, had, really pushed this forward. So, Doug, I'll ask you what your thoughts are about it, because I know you and I had a pretty good conversation on the show at the time about it. And, the idea of when you have, the grassroots efforts pushing forward and then the actual latch on from, the powers that be. What was it like to watch? What do you think?
As I remember, perennial candidate Angelo Marignani made a big deal out of this issue, really pushed hard on it, and very effectively, so effectively that it appears that the ward councillor and mayor felt like he was potentially creating a vulnerability there, and that they needed to step in and make some change. So, there are a lot of reasons why people get into politics. There are a lot of reasons why people run for office and do all that good stuff. And a lot of them are selfish reasons and not great reasons. But one of the best things that you can do with the platform that you have as a candidate for office is try to improve your community and use that moment of attention, that moment of having the ear of the public to try to move issues forward that matter to you and are going to improve your community. And Angelo Marignani met that bar of conduct here, and I was really impressed with it. I think it was a really good thing to do, and I think it did result in some pretty rapid action from the mayor and the city administration. And you can always tell when something is being done by government as a response to something that has happened or a response to criticism, when they go out of their way to tell you how long they've been thinking about it and working on it, and that it has absolutely nothing to do with the criticism that the public has been leveling. And that's what happened here. Again, kudos to Angelo, probably the best thing he's done as a politician.
Don, what's your take on it?
Yeah, kind of the same on Doug. I mean, we did do a show on that when probably 4 years or whenever the last election was, when it came up. That's been an issue out there for quite a while. My current girlfriend lived right there in a house right on Riverside Drive. Obviously that was before Dawn, because I don't have that kind of lifestyle. And she's been upset ever since. But it's always been an issue there. It's kind of a dangerous spot just because of the currents that are out there. So I'm glad it got some real attention, and they've actually tried to do something about it. But yeah, I agree with Doug. I remember when when it all came up, we kind of said the same thing. Win or lose, Angelo brought up something that obviously is very important, because some people have passed away there, and maybe the luck of the draw I don't want to say it that way, but maybe it was fortunate that timing wise there was an election going on that it didn't get lost just in, the news cycle of, oh boy, someone passed away there, we should fix that. And then tomorrow it's, new burritos at Taco Bell. So yeah, so good on Angelo. I'm glad he did it. Angelo's, he's run many times, come very close a few times. Last by-election, he didn't do great. And I think it was during COVID, so I don't think he really campaigned and all. I'm not sure if Jewin did or not, but yeah, on that specific issue, yeah, I mean, good on Angelo, did a great job, and hopefully something gets resolved and we don't have to worry about any more people taking their life in their hands by going swimming.
Yeah, undoubtedly. I mean, it's insane that it was a situation that went on for, 25, 30, 35 years, and just every couple of years there were deaths.
And not only just that, I mean, people have, as someone, look, I'm older than you guys. So I'd been to Sandpoint back in like the 80s and 90s when, when it was rip roaring fun, or maybe I was just younger then and it seemed like a lot more fun, but they really did let it go for a long time. I mean, the maintenance out there was poor. There was a concession stand there that got run down. Just the beach kind of got run down. So it's nice that they've actually, over the past few years anyway, put some money to cleaned it up. I know they talked about fencing for a while. So, it's a nice little spot in Windsor that I think gets overlooked a lot. A lot of people forget it's there until you drive by and see all the people hanging out on the beach. So, hopefully they keep at it and make it a nice little spot again.
I didn't realize that this was going to be a bit, but every time we talk about some landmark in an East End ward, I'm like, I've never been there. I've never been to Sandpoint Beach.
Yeah, well, for those of us who
I used to work in the ward. I used to work in Ward 7 anyway.
Did you ever accidentally drive by it going to the yacht club or something?
Yeah. Oh, maybe I didn't notice.
I don't know where you park your yacht, but
it's got the great totem pole that proves how very, very diverse Windsor is. We accepted it from the West Coast, so that means there's no racism, of course. That's why
you can't be
trying
racist
to do
in the
symbolic
West Coast.
things. It's impossible.
Impossible to be racist on the West Coast.
Yeah, kudos though to Angelo, push the issue forward enough to make the elected powers that be a little concerned to come out and do the dog and pony show. And I think it worked for everyone involved, quite frankly. Residents it worked for, elected officials it worked for. They got their little perks from it, and then Angelo got his boost from it. Everyone can walk away I guess feeling a little good. Weird win-win-win, I guess.
Yeah, and on top of that, I don't know if this is actually one of your topics, because God knows I don't ever read the research.
Son of a gun.
They know, Don.
Yeah. After all these years, I don't think anyone's surprised by that. But they spent a lot of money in the last 2 years redoing the marina out there, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And some people thought that was kind of a waste of money, and basically throwing taxpayers' money at quote unquote rich people who can afford to have yachts and boats in the marina. But they did a great job. I've been out there and looked at it. The floating docks are fantastic. And so that whole area, I mean, the beach, the marina, they really cleaned it up and made it look nice.
It's definitely a nicer area there with new docks, and it's it's public. I have a friend who's got a sailboat. It's not like a crazy one, but it's nice enough. Picked it up for a couple thousand, and I've gone for a couple rides out. I don't know if that's the appropriate terminology.
I like how you have to frame it that your friend has like a hobo's sailboat. I don't think that I'm hanging out with rich people. It's basically just a bathtub with a like an extra strong stopper in the hole.
And an old t-shirt up as the sail, and they just posted it on a hockey stick.
Does it surprise anyone we don't get invited to the nice parties? I'm just letting everyone know what the background is. No, but I mean, it's nice now to know that the docks have been replaced as well. But, so that came up first, of course, the move. Shouldn't surprise anyone. We spoke about this as well. The new Hope Hill, Tobogganing Hill, the former Suicide Hill, has been renamed. Of course, there were complaints that were brought forward about it due to the lack of sensitivity. I actually hadn't realized that it was like, a quasi semi-official name, which to me was pretty staggering. Like, it wasn't just like a convention that there just was, but it was like actually like, that's where people would be dispatched to if there was like a fire or police emergency or something.
Broken bones.
broken bones. Yes, of course. But I think, this speaks to, and, we'll talk about this, I think, at the end, like, these are not the biggest of issues in terms of, impacting every specific person in the ward. But I think it speaks to, as Doug was talking about, the demographics and what are the types of people that live here? What are the ranges that, where are the investments that typically are seen? But to see something like this, Doug, this is it's not to suggest it's not an important news story, but this is very community newspaper type news story, but it's one of the biggest ones that there was. What's your take on, I guess what I'm trying to get across, or am I just coming across awful to the listenership?
No, I don't think so at all. Ward 7 is, in my vague understanding of East Windsor, Ward 7 is primarily residential. You heard the demography of the ward. This is a ward with a significant population of young people. So there's lots of families in the ward. And it's not surprising that the concerns of people who live in the ward are really close to home. And we saw this in the by-election campaign. These were the issues that the candidates focused on. They focused on, walkability, like safety on the street, and traffic calming, and parks. And, they focused on the things that matter to, I think, the kind of residents that live in Ward 7. One of the things that I'm interested in seeing when we get a fuller census breakdown for the demography of the ward is how that's changed. They've added 12% to the population over the last 5 years. Is that going to mean even more preponderance of families and young people? That would be my guess. Is that that's what a lot of that population growth represents. So I think we can expect to see more of the same. It's kind of fun, John, to have a ward in the city where it's a lot of like sleepy small town stuff is the Ward 7 news, and there's nothing wrong with that. They can't all be Ward 3.
It's nice to just have like a like this is the ASMR episode to a certain extent.
Yeah, that's right.
Don, your take on this.
Well, yeah, teeing off of what Doug was saying, I guess I'll go back to real estate, Don. I would, I'm going to say the vast majority of that growth for the last I've been in real estate for 22 years now. They started building out there around 2004-ish. So anyone, who's been out that way, obviously you've seen the Cocoa subdivision off of Banwell Cocoa Industries or Corporation or whatever Jenny calls it. She owned all that land, kind of most of the land between Banwell and Lozon, and going east a little bit bumping up to Tecumseh. And it's been an interesting subdivision because when it started around, again, I'm guessing 2004, 2005, maybe a year or two earlier, they were really building kind of entry level type homes, very similar to the Raymax homes you would have had in Devonshire Heights that were, 900 square feet, 1,000 square feet. They weren't expensive. They're like 150 grand, at the beginning, even 129.9 for some of the small ones. And then obviously then we hit the downfall in 2007 and things got really tough for a while. But if you look back, probably at least the last 5 to 7 years, what they're building over there has changed a lot. I should also say Blue Heron was put over there, which was almost kind of like a retirement. They're really going after the retirees. So there's a lot of smaller townhomes that you could get around the lake. And for the people who don't know, that actually used to be a dump out there. That big hill is they've covered up, a landfill. So since then, especially in the last few years, you've seen a very big change. They've gone from kind of middle income, typical, 1,200 square foot raised ranches to a lot of higher end townhomes that are around 1,400 square feet, which are now running in the mid 6s to 7s. And then the newer lots that have opened up, they've kind of gotten away from building the smaller houses, and now they're building 3,000 square foot 2 stories that are going for over $1 million plus. And there's a lot of those that have gone up. So a lot of those original buyers, when you talk about there's a lot of kids in the area, a lot of those original buyers were young families or just young couples. So yeah, their kids are probably teenagers by now, And then, so a lot of families over there. They were great houses for young families starting out because they were new. You had a garage, you had your raised ranch, so you could finish the basement and get some room down there, and it didn't feel like you're in a basement. But like I say, since then, they've really gone super high end on the newer builds that are being built over there right now. And even heading back towards WFCU Center, they got some Far East got some apartments going in there, and now from Lozon to just up to where the old Lear factory would have been. I mean, the whole Lear factory property, all super high end stuff, $1 million plus big houses that, a lot of people from out of town have been coming down and buying. So demographics wise, I think you're going to continue to see population growth because there still are, I'm going to hazard to guess, hundreds of lots out there. There used to be thousands, but now there's probably hundreds. And there's new sections opening up all the time. If we can get rid of all those bald eagles and people stop complaining about that, we could cut those trees down and build some houses, which has been a big, huge debate out there. And I make a joke about it, but leave the eagles alone. We can't cut down every tree out there. So yeah, I think the income's going to continue to go up. I think your demographics are going to stay right around where they are, but there are they built a ton of ranch townhomes out there. So maybe you're going to see people like me, because completely honest, I've been looking at them myself, just because I have an old 2-story downtown and I'm like 96 years old now and I don't like going up and down stairs. So it's, maintenance free. They take care of everything out there, lawn and snow, and you don't have to worry about it. So yeah, going forward, I think demographics, you're going to see the population continue to rise because there's still lots out there. And I think you're going to see incomes continue to rise, average incomes, just because what they're selling now is generally on your super high end, not super high end, but high end of the market, where 900 would be the lowest price.
Okay, you've given me another reason to watch the census releases to find out if Don
There you
was
go.
right. And
just go out there. There's like bike paths around the lake. You can go for a ride, Doug.
Oh, it is gorgeous out there. Like you would be amazed to see, Doug. There's just like 3 private lakes and paths that go all around, not private, public lakes. And there's paths that go all around them. They're in parkland, public parkland. And guess what? There's not a friggin' bench to be seen. And it's like 6 kilometers of trails. It's like you are there to walk around this neighborhood and then get the hell out. Don't stop at all.
Don't you dare stop.
It's wild.
Well, we're, I mentioned demography a moment ago. I almost forgot to thank and credit friend of the show, Fraser Fathers, for doing all the work 4 years ago on his blog, Ginger Politics. Know Your Ward was the series that he did. He has promised to update those this year, so we will look for that with great attention. And he also is the person who fed me the updated population numbers. So kudos to Fraser. Thank you very much.
And for someone who went to Suicide Hill when it was cool and not safe, we used to go there as teenagers all the time. Now, the greatest thing about Suicide Hill is I don't know what the hell was going on out there when kids weren't there, but you'd go down this hill and there'd be like giant concrete cinder road dividers. There'd be the occasional washer and dryer that, you could hit on the way down. And it came to just a blunt. It was fantastic. You'd come sailing down this hill on your toboggan, avoiding all the structures that are definitely trying to kill you. And then for some reason, there was a fence right at the bottom where you kind of hit bushland. So something was gonna stop you really quick. Now, if you go out there and look at it now, it just looks like a nice rolling hill that kids will have fun on. But there's no risk of death anymore. So I guess the name changes is appropriate, because there's a few times we went out there and one of my buddies or myself would catch a tree stump sticking out of the snow and take a shoulder out, and it was a lot of fun.
Dude, weren't there any other hills you could go to? What the hell, Don?
It's
why would you toboggan down Risk of Death Hill? I don't understand.
Doug, you and I have led very different lives. I sense that you've maybe mine's had a little more danger and stupidity in it than yours has. And
maybe it's
possibly. Yeah.
I never had to worry about dodging refrigerators on my toboggan. So I think
let's obviously you've missed out. So I'm sorry you had a terrible childhood.
Final topic in projects and controversies in the ward, parks and trails upgrades. This was a ward with again, very, very, very quiet ward issues here that we're talking about, but this goes back to some of the ones that we saw before, Doug, that we've talked about, where are these real trails upgrades, or are these just maintenance upgrades, right? But one of the biggest things I think, we're getting into the area is the the Ganacho Trail and the extension. And we saw the protests about the the trails, that some people didn't want to see the extension. And the name right now is completely eluding me. I feel dumb about that.
All I
But
remember is that they had "We Are Not NIMBYs" on the website.
that's a great defense if you have to come out right off the bat. Probably you are. I'm just speculating. I'm not alleging.
Well,
Doug,
let me say something about people who live in that
stop,
area.
stop the trail. It was so simple.
Stop the trail. Yeah. Yeah. God forbid anyone from,
Stop the trail is right up there with "Kill the squirrels." Like,
yeah,
man,
pretty
your
much.
slogan
Yeah.
is terrible.
Yeah. They don't want anybody west
Oh,
of Lausanne
sorry,
Road to
sorry.
come into their neighborhood.
I'm sorry. Rethink the trail. Rethink
Oh,
the trail.
okay.
The trail.
Rethink the squirrels. Okay, that's
So the interesting thing, and I have real estate friends out there, and I know a lot of people actually live in that area. It's interesting because much like Doug doesn't like to go east of Walker Road because he finds it morally offensive, the people who live in that area, they never come downtown. You're never going to see those people downtown. They're going east to Tecumseh so they can hang out with the cooler friends and hopefully get an invite to Beech Grove, because they're in that income bracket where they're just, they're like the guests of Beech Grove. They don't have the membership, but they
Yeah.
have friends who go there,
they
and it's
have
more
pool
aspirational.
memberships.
Cool, yeah. It's really an aspirational area where the next jump is I can be in Russell Woods or Tecumseh or St. Clair Beach, which the really true St. Clair Beachers refuse to refer to themselves as Lakeshore because it's morally offensive. But yeah, so yeah, those people don't come this way. They always go east, and much like Doug doesn't go east and stays west.
Maybe we need an exchange program.
Good, yeah. An exchange program. Okay. For like almost Tecumseh people, and people live by Roseland Golf Course. Geez, the cultures must be so different.
Yes. We need a cultural exchange. I can explain to them which South Windsor shawarma shops to avoid and which ones to patronize. There's a lot of
Exactly.
information that we can share.
You can compare, do you use ping wedges or are you using Callaways? It's a lot of very good information in there you could share.
Well, there's the Sportsman's Club too, right?
Yep. The Riverside
So-
Sportsman Club does a market out there so that, those people don't have to come down here with us, Ward 3 low lives and hang out at our market. So they started their own.
Okay.
Sometimes it's good just to let the silence hang.
Yes. Well, that's when the audience is laughing, John.
Yeah.
Gives them room for their joy.
So we'll move on to the the deep analysis of our political insight and acumen that we can lay on to this topic. That's what you all come here, folks, for. So let's dive in. We've set it up. You've heard some of the background, the stats, the demography, the employment, where we come from, the census update. We've talked about some of the issues, and I guess we're just going to be looking forward right now. There's an election that's coming up. So let's just use this as the jumping off point. We know that Councillor Gill still, relatively new, no matter how you want to cut it, right? I mean, that's the only way to really put it. Going to be going up presumably again against, Councillor, or excuse me, I keep saying Councillor Marignani, candidate Marignani. And I just wonder, we can dive into, some of those past numbers a bit more right now. We've definitely talked about this on the show before, but Doug, I want to bring you in right off the outset about it. What do you think it's going to look like rushing towards this election? We've already seen some of the direct Mayor Dilkins and Councillor Gill, hand holding and throwing up into the air kind of thing, setting the stage for the lit drops. How do you think that this election, the approach to it is going to play out? And, even let's just speculate using the candidates that we presume are going to be in it.
Yeah, so Councillor Gill won a by-election, and we have some history on that. There are two previous by-elections in the last 30 years that have happened. In both cases, the by-election winner came back to have a roaring victory in the ward in the next election. Eddie Francis and Percy Hatfield. Eddie Francis and Irk Kazmarczyk was replacing Percy Hatfield. That happened to both of them. They both came back and had a big win afterwards. But I think if you dig a little deeper, you can start to see some differences. One thing that I think is pretty different is that in both 1999 and in 2013, those by-elections happened with a very short runway to the next election. So the campaign machinery of Eddie Francis and of Eric Kazmarczyk probably never completely shut down. They most likely transitioned right into the campaign for the general election. Juan Gill doesn't have that advantage necessarily. Counterbalance that with the fact that he has an additional year of incumbency. And he does seem to have been supportive of Mayor Dilkin's agenda. And that seems to have paid off for him in support from Mayor Dilkins in terms of Mayor Dilkins going out of his way to include Councillor Gill in, photo ops and announcements and so forth. And I think that that is a powerful thing for Councillor Gill. The mayor is popular in the ward, so that's helpful to him. I think though that you, and I also want to say that Juan Gill clearly knows what he's doing in terms of campaigning and politics. The way that he conducted himself during the campaign, and now I'm talking about the nuts and bolts of the campaign, identifying his vote, canvassing, making sure that there was good lit coverage. My understanding is that he used some third-party paid tools in order to secure his election. All legitimate, and nothing that I'm not saying anything wasn't above board. What I'm saying is that he has a lot of experience, a strong grasp of tactics and how you should execute in an election. And I also think he has a pretty good idea of what to do in office in terms of being able to, you guys are killing me. So apparently my microphone is hitting my button and causing some noise. Apologies to the listeners there. I hope it's better now, guys. I've fiddled with my button enough. So I think that he's got a lot going for him in terms of his ability to execute a campaign. I'm not going to get away from that one too quick, am I? But I also think that there is potential risks out there for Councillor Gill. One is Angelo Marignani has tremendous name recognition in the ward. The guy has run 6 times in the ward over the years, and he has had some success. Never got over the top, but he has put up pretty big numbers. My information is that Marignani is most likely going to run again. And in third place in the by-election was Greg LeMay. He got 781 votes after a big effort. He was new to the ward at the time, having run in Ward 8 previously. But I also have reason to believe that Mr. LeMay will be running again as well. So there are some people who know how to campaign, who have decent name recognition, who are going to be in the mix, potentially in the mix next year. And I think that creates a potential challenge for Gill, because we know that Gill can secure 1,015 votes. What is as yet untested is how high his ceiling is. And his ability to connect with voters and motivate voters to come out in big numbers to vote for him. We have yet to see what that looks like. So that will be a question mark and a challenge for Mr. Gill, I think. And I think too, the electoral landscape may work in his favor. Either LeMay or Marignani would be able to mount a strong challenge to Gill, but I'm not sure with both of them running, whether or not they're actually not effectively handing the election to the incumbent if both of them get into the race. And before I kind of go away from this, the last thing I want to say is you got to remember that as much as Councillor Gill won in 2020, he was the winner at the end. Marignani also lost it. And by that, I mean that Marignani's choices caused him to lose that by-election. When you go and look at the financial disclosure, you look at Councillor Gill's financial disclosure, he had a lot of money, he spent it wisely, he spent it well, and he used it effectively. You look at Marignani's financial disclosure, he didn't spend anything. You know, he recycled his signs from the previous campaign, and that was just about it. So I think Marignani has got himself to blame. The gap between Gill and Marignani was very, very surmountable in 2020. If he had spent, I don't know, $2,000, get some literature, make some phone calls, he might well have found himself over the top in that by-election, and he would be the incumbent councillor. He is not now the incumbent councillor because he made some mistakes in the by-election campaign. And I think if he wants to get in again, and if he wants to win, he needs to learn from those mistakes. He needs to run a properly funded campaign. And he needs to execute all of the things that you need to do to win a campaign. If he does that, he will be a contender and he potentially could win this ward. It's entirely up to Marignani whether he wants to do that or not. And the only advice that I would offer is that if you do not think that you are up to spending the money and raising the money or doing the work through the campaign, then realize your role is more than likely going to be spoiler and decide whether that's something you're happy with.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, then and again, this was a COVID by-election, so everything was a little bit different. But I believe when we discussed it, Angelo said he wasn't really going out and knocking on doors or anything at that time, was he?
Yeah, there was a lot of, glad you brought that up. We covered the by-election extensively. There was a lot of discussion about it. And I think that if you remember, it was a suspended by-election. We had the campaign was underway and then COVID happened. And I think you had some folks who never stopped canvassing. I was pretty harsh in my criticism of LeMay for canvassing in like April and May of 2020. I didn't think that was a very good look. I think by the end of that election period, we knew enough about what we were dealing with and people had sort of settled down enough that door-to-door canvassing was possible. I know that Gill canvassed and LeMay never stopped. Or if he did stop, he definitely resumed it by the time election day rolled around. But I think you're right. I don't think Marignani canvassed either. And it made sense as a safety measure for everybody in March, April, May of 2020. But in the fall of 2020, it starts to look like an excuse and not a reason.
Yeah, definitely. And I remember doing our by-election show where we had all the candidates on, and there was quite an extensive list of candidates that were running in that by-election. And I think, what you said is sure, throw the list out there.
All right, we're going to go through this list with numbers just for fun.
Oh, we're actually doing this. I thought it was a joke. Oh,
no,
yeah,
as you
this
know,
is dive. Let's dive in.
Don is my advisor. Don is the person that I look to as a model for how to conduct myself in life. So if Don says,
not just on the show,
absolutely not. Absolutely not. Any life decision, Don, what would you do? Okay. Gill.
He's got one of those bumper stickers on the back. WWD do. Yeah.
Oh my God. Gill 1015, Marignani 879, LeMay 781. Big drop off after LeMay. Barb Holland, may remember her, 426. Mike Mallet 404. Igor Zyk 396. Michelle Gajewski 378. Therese Papineau 311. Farah El Haj 266. Albert Saba 189. Howard Weeks 78. And Ernie, the candidate formerly known as the Bacon Man, Lamont with 33.
I forgot he even ran in the. I know he runs in everything he can, but
I don't think he's running anymore. That was his swan song, man.
What a way to go out, Ernie. I think what you said is right. I think if Angelo, I honestly thought Angelo, after what, paying attention and doing our show on the by-election last time, I thought Angelo was a shoo-in. I'm not gonna lie. I thought So maybe he had the same thought process of that. Well, I don't really have to put a lot of effort into this. I'm going to run a Joanne Genia campaign where I just get in because people love me. And I think what maybe something he didn't understand, and this is going back to my real estate life, demographics and racial makeup has really changed out in that area quite a bit. It's not just, upper middle class white people living out there anymore. So I think Juan's done a pretty good job. I mean, he hasn't been there long, and but when we were following the by-election, Juan to me kind of just snuck up in between everybody there and ran away with it. Now, I, would you say he was kind of an unknown before that? Which he's not unknown to us because he's run before and he's run.
I wouldn't say he's unknown at all. So Juan Gill was a provincial candidate in 2014, 2013.
Somewhere around there.
Juan Gill has long been a leader of in the community. He is, I think, pretty prominent in his ethnic community. So no, I wouldn't say that. I mean, to the general public, almost everybody is unknown.
Yeah.
But within the ward, certainly within the pockets of support that he needed to tap into in order to win a by-election, Juan Gill was well known. Now, the question, does that translate into the, when you get 10,000 people voting instead of 5,000 people voting or 3,000 people voting in a by-election, does that have the same impact? It's a question. It is an open question. I think that's one of the things to look at, but I wouldn't say that he's an unknown. No.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, anybody who isn't an incumbent and runs in a municipal election is kind of an unknown to the public. But I guess the point I was trying to make, even though the public may not have known him as well as we would, just because we pay attention to politics, he knew how to campaign. He knew what to do to get elected. Whereas, as someone who was a candidate, a lot of us are just making it up by the seat of our pants the first time you run out because you just don't know what to do. But he had that experience behind him, and I think he kind of snuck in, and myself included. I didn't probably give him enough credit when he was running to think that he would actually, pull it off. And Juan actually is a real estate agent too, so his name has been out there just because of the nature of our job and advertising. You want to get your name out there. So yeah, I think he did a great job. I think he's a bit of an unknown to the public, but I guess we shouldn't have been surprised that he actually came out where he did, or certainly would have been in the top two, because just through his experience and ability to know what to do during a campaign that most candidates don't even really have an idea of what they should be doing.
You can't underestimate the value of experience. Juan Gill is a longtime Liberal. And there's a lot of people who are longtime Liberals who don't know their ass from a hole in the ground when it comes to elections. Just like I'm sure that's true of every other partisan stripe. So just saying that he's a longtime Liberal is one thing, but Juan has a long history of engaging in intramural politics within the Liberal Party. He is a savvy and adroit political operator. He does know what to do. And you look at that list, the only person on that list of candidates who would have more experience than Juan Gill is Angelo Marignani, just because the guy ran 5 times. But there's a big difference between serving on other people's campaigns, running in smaller, like intramural elections and things like that, and learning all those lessons and learning by watching and being a part of things that other people are executing. There's a big difference between that and running your own election campaign for council. Now, I don't know if Angelo has ever worked on anyone else's campaign or done anything like that, but if you are interested in politics and you want to be elected someday, the first election that you work should not be your own. That's just some free advice for any aspiring politicians out there. If the first election that you work on is your own, you're playing on hard mode.
Playing on hard mode. I like how you put that. I mean, it is true. Don and I can both comment about that to a certain extent.
Because you guys did it. You both
we
did it on hard
both
mode.
played on hard mode. Yeah. 100%.
The second round through, it was a bit easier though. I had I picked up a little bit. This is an interesting topic. I don't know where we go from here though, other than, I guess what surprises did we have looking at this over the past year, if any? And if not, I know that we've got a last topic here that we can sort of touch base on.
Yeah, not too much really. I don't know if this is going to be part of the last topic though, but obviously the new hospital has been a big topic out there just because they tend to be more in favor of it because geographically they're going to be closer to the new location. We discussed this, with Ward 6 last week too. Yeah, and I was going to mention earlier when you were talking about the mayor and Councillor Gill kind of out there doing things together as a team. Ward 7 and Ward 1 are probably similar voting bases. So I think the mayor, or Drew Dilkins anyway, running as the mayor, did well in Ward 7 would be my guess. So I think it's the same kind of, you're operating in the same kind of voters list.
Yeah, so we talked about this a bit on the Ward 4 show. The wards that matter the most in Windsor in terms of getting elected in a citywide race are 1, 6, 7, 4. And pretty much in that order. Ward 7 has good turnout. And it's, only after wards 1 and 6. So it's really important for making a mayor. And that was one of the things that I think was really challenging for Mayor Dilkins with Eric Kazmierczak in the seat. Not that it's impossible to work with Eric, and not that they're so ideologically far away that that it would be impossible, but those two people just clearly didn't like each other. There was a personality issue between Kazmierczak and Dilkins, and it was, I think it was a problem. I think that it was a problem for both of them politically, because it is a ward where Kazmierczak was popular and Dilkins was popular. And you had to find a way to try to square that circle, even though they found themselves at odds politically quite a bit. Mayor Dilkins was only too happy to see Mr. Kazmierczak win a federal election and be out of his hair. And I think that since then, Mayor Dilkins has moved carefully to identify a potential ally. He supported that ally in the by-election without totally compromising himself, but he supported Ji-Win Gill and I think provided some key help that got Ji-Win Gill elected. And since then, the two have been absolutely inseparable. And I think that the mayor goes out of his way to make Ji-Win Gill feel good, to make Ji-Win Gill feel like he's part of the team, and to make sure that Ji-Win Gill is getting everything he needs politically. And that's not just out of electoral self-interest because Ward 7 is important to the mayor, but it's also, I think, because he knows what it's like when the half of the key wards in the city are not on side with your political agenda. When Holt and Kazmierczak held those two seats, it was not comfortable and probably more difficult. So I think you can see this as also beyond just the electoral math. It's also consolidating support from councillors in the wards that matter the most, because that is going to make for less surprises at election time.
That is interesting analysis. And, I think no, I don't think I take it to heart. I will take it to heart. You provide a lot to the table, Doug. So I will automatically take it straight to heart.
I'm still trying to figure out if
I don't know
Doug,
why I'd question it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out if Doug's jokes about, being in the mayor's hair was, just a shot across the bow at us bald guys, or if that was unintentional.
Honestly,
he said you're his advisor.
Totally unintentional.
Well, folks, we did it. We got through a show diving into the issues of Ward 7. Ward Watch continues. Hard to believe that we are now well past 7 hours into this segment. You do the show week after week after week, but when you start stacking them up and you realize like just how much time's been put in, I go like, man, I could have done a lot of other stuff too. But
we're also getting punchier as we go along. Like I imagine that by the time that we get to Ward 10, it's just going to be like horn honks and fart noises. Sorry, Morrison, but that's what it's going to be.
Good luck, buddy.
Morrison and Kieran are in for quite the shows once we get to their point.
Well, wait till we get to if we do the mayor's show as well, although I think that would be a little more expected. But this has been fun. It's always nice to be able to dive into these things, but I got to wrap this up. I got to run to a board meeting right now. So everyone, thanks for tuning in and listening to Rose City Politics. It is February 16th, and this was Ward Watch Ward 7. And you can support us if you're so inclined at patreon.com/Rose City Politics. If you do want us to become punchier as the weeks go by, that's a great way to affect it. We've always said, give us money, and the whole show format changes to whatever it is that you demand. Jokes aside, we are in BizX Magazine and bizxmagazine.com on all of your favorite social media and podcasting apps, and Rose City Politics is able to broadcast live on tape thanks to the kind support of Leuna 625, building better communities. We will be back next week. It will be the 23rd of February, and we will be talking about Ward 8. See you then.